Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to hear more about Agentforce Vibes. But first, let me ask you, vibe coding is coming, and all of a sudden, we can have people that don't necessarily know how to put their hands on the code, turn their intellectual property into functional apps. Tell me more about that. How did it change the narrative?
I think the key thing we started seeing was just how good the LLMs were becoming to automate tasks. So it's sort of been this evolution of, hey, I can predict the next line of code and more like create a function, right? In a single file. Then it's like, hey, maybe it's creating a single file. Then it's creating multiple files. Then it's actually orchestrating the interconnection of those files. So it really has sort of been this progression that if you sort of follow it logically through, there's a lot of things that tools like Vibes allow you to do with the right sort of guidance of the trust layer and context, and obviously our MCP tools that will guide you through making sure that you're successful in building applications that can target the Salesforce platform.
So now, do you see a world in which people can not just create apps, but businesses? I feel like I see a lot of activity in the world of vibe coding that, lets people do an MVP, but not much more
Correct.
than that. Is there something different the way Salesforce is looking at it? Are we building MVPs or are we building more?
Yeah, I think that's a great one. It really is sort of differentiates between what we're doing, which is regular. There's regular vibe coding and tools like Lovable for building an MVP and sort of the look and feel of your application as a prototype versus enterprise vibe coding. So what do we mean by enterprise vibe coding? One, a lot of the tools that exist for building prototypes, they're only for new apps. A lot of times you already have an existing app. What I'm doing is adding features or functionality, or I just want to reuse libraries. Hey, we're building a new app for our inventory service, a mobile version of our inventory service. We already have the inventory service. We're building the UI and controls part. So that's the part we're doing. So you need that sort of mix of new and existing. Second is spec-driven development. This is obviously a big thing that we're seeing a push, which is the more time you spend on understanding and defining the requirements for the application, the better off you'll be. So Agentforce Vibes includes a planning mode launched with the new capability called deep planning that takes a set of requirements, understands them, has you do a back and forth to understand, hey, how do you want to build this application, and builds an implementation plan. And it's literally called implementation plan down markdown. That is the file that it would take. So spec-driven development is another key area that's sort of differentiated from those. And then obviously reuse and context. So with reuse, if we had 10 people using Lovable, we'd end up with 10 inventory management, 10 ways to calculate the tax calculator, 10 ways to manage returns. Why? Because each individual is building their own tool. They're building their own prototype versus reusing existing. Reuse is the sort of like the number one thing you really want to do is, hey, we already have this set of APIs, these class libraries, these LWC components, these tools. My goal or intent is to reuse them when I'm building my application. I've become more of a plumber of, hey, I identified these things. You have this schema in your org. Do you want to reuse this when building your application? So I think that's the key is how do you reuse and then obviously use the context of both your project, your custom rules, and the org that you're connected to build your application. And then just a couple other things, obviously just being on the Agentforce Trust Layer. So the thing, your application doesn't leave the Agentforce Trust Layer, and then we're building by quality by default. So a lot of times when you look at it, it's like what I'm trying to do is build a prototype. I don't care if it doesn't work or is not accessible and everything else. We really want to have sort of code complete, if you will. So that means we're building the unit test for you. We're doing the accessibility checks for you. We're really thinking about how it's running code analyzer tools for you. So how do you build something, not just a prototype, but something real that is much closer to being production ready than just a regular prototype, where most of the time you're like breaking this thing apart and not using it as like, geez, it just rebuilt this thing. We already have this. It just doesn't have the smarts of your enterprise's context.
So you're not constantly reinventing the wheel. And that kind of make me think of an objection that I've heard, being in the world of innovators, vibe coders. Why wouldn't they use another vibe coding tool, like another coding agent? What is making Agentforce Vibes extra special when it comes to working on the Agentforce platform?
Yeah, so it sort of just depends on what you want to do. If you are happy and you don't want to do anything, we're still exposing our tools and services available to whatever the tools are, Cursor, Windsurf, or anti-gravity now.
Mhm.
All those are extensions for VS Code, including Vibes. And actually, it can be a both. As long as you're in a VS Code compatible IDE, you can have our Salesforce extensions for VS Code. Now, the second thing is like, well, okay, so tell me the difference between these. And I think that's where it really comes down to a couple things. One, we're doing everything that you need to get started. So sort of lowering the barrier to entry. So that means we have a Vibes IDE, a browser-based IDE. If you compare that with Cursor, Cursor is a desktop-only tool and requires you to set up everything manually, right? What we do is we give you everything by default setup. So that means it ships with our rules. It ships with our DX MCP automatically configured. It has a plan and act mode. Cursor, I think, only got a planning mode last month, maybe. And then obviously the code doesn't leave our trust layer. So when we're working within the trust layer, your code is literally leaving to whatever Cursor, uses for that. So having customers that want that safety and security level of Agentforce Trust Layer can reuse that. And then lastly is we include a number of requests for you. So we got 50 GPT-5 requests per org per day. So if you have our UE Unlimited Edition customer, you have 100 sandboxes. It's not 50 for all of them. It's 50 per sandbox. So it's 100 orgs. Each of those gets their own set of 50 requests.
Understood. So a developer that is really committed to one of those tools, as long as it's VS Code 4, like all of them are,
Yeah.
they can
Lovable
use
is
both.
nice. Exactly.
They can use both, right? So they can live into their new coding IDE and have Agentforce vibes coming in
Right.
when it matters.
Exactly.
And you mentioned MCP. How does it play a role in this coding agent orchestration? What does it bring to the table?
So we shipped our DX local MCP tools. And just today, we also announced our hosted MCP tools. So our DX local MCP tools includes tools for like getting metadata, retrieving metadata, deployment, running code analyzer, writing a SOC proof. So again, I sometimes refer to it as a speed dial. Kids don't really use speed dial, but some of us remember speed dial. The CLI tools that we had, which is like, hey, what would you normally do? You'd retrieve metadata, get metadata, write a query, run Apex tests, those sort of things that you can now easily do just by using natural language as that accelerant, if you will. A couple other power things that it does is things like the OR to LWC conversion. Here's a great example. We have ISVs, they have legacy code. What they want to do is a lot of times is, hey, how do I modernize my code? You all show me this great stuff with LWC. I have an investment in Aura, so I can't take advantage of it. Now we have tools that will walk up to your code base and actually automate the migration of your Aura components to LWC. And again, it may work like 80% of the time where it just works great. Areas where it doesn't work, it'll grade itself, how well it worked. Where it doesn't work, it'll tell you, hey, these are the last steps you need to do to implement. So again, really, it's thinking about how do we provide a set of tools that automate the most common tasks for Salesforce application.
So this is playing a role like in the refactoring. Like I'm thinking about, applications that are a decade old, that carry a ton of like different framework of how we used to do things a couple of years ago. And so what you're telling me is that Agentforce Vibes will be able to kind of like sift through it and provide recommendation on what
it actually does the migration for you. So it'll be like, hey, here's your old one, here's your new one. That component. And then, hey, I went through, I let's just say it's 5, just to make the numbers easy. 4 out of 5 converted with no problem. This 5th one, we're able to convert this, but we don't have a one-to-one map of how this should work, used to work in Aura, this should work in LWC, and it gives you suggestions.
Awesome. Now there's one thing that our partners is always on their mind is that they have to, when they build something, they have to go through security review. Is Agentforce Vibe giving us edge when it comes to like getting what we're building, the application, the business that we're building ready to go through security review?
Yeah, I think one area that folks that is sort of undersold is Code Analyzer.
Mhm.
So Code Analyzer is available everywhere, as we like to say.
Yep.
It's a CLI plugin. It's available as a VS Code extension that you can run on, say, like after every save. It's available in Agentforce Vibes to do automatic remediation of your project. It's available as a GitHub action as well. That same Code Analyzer tool is run every security review. So if you want to just eliminate the most basic examples where you'll have issues in your security review, make sure you're running and have a Code Analyzer as part of your CI/CD workflow, and obviously shift left. So you're running that locally. And so what does Code Analyzer actually do? Again, totally free tool, but it includes a lot of the best open source tools that we have to improve the quality of code. So that includes best practices, that includes optimizations, security. It runs even flow security tests, for example, and it's completely customizable. Apex PMD that people have known and loved, and things like Graph Engine. Graph Engine is a great example where it's not just a static analysis tool. What it's doing is checking a call graph and making sure that somewhere within there, you're not passing a nullable value. Daniel Bollinger has this great stat where I think it's like 17% of Apex exceptions are actually just null values. I pass something, and again, I see that there's a variable in to Apex, but no one's actually initialized the variable.
Yeah.
There's a null reference exception. You can catch that not at one time, but actually at design time using the Graph Engine. So it's just those examples of how do you make sure that you're sort of preparing yourself for that and taking away the easy parts of the recommendations from a security review.
So Agentforce Vibe is not just any, coding agent. It has like the mindset on how to build an Agentforce application, but do it in a secure way.
It's absolutely right. Secure, performing, following best practices.
Now, to wrap it up, what would you suggest someone who's discovering Agentforce Vibes, perhaps someone who does not have any coding background, what would be the easiest project for them to get their hands and understand the capabilities that we're unleashing, for them to build their business?
Two resources to look at. One is your video series and a bunch of the developer relations. Like Philip just released a 7-part series on using Agentforce Vibes that really walks you through step by step, including using the built-in MCP tools as well as third-party MCP tools. Because again, you could use this for Figma to LWC and so on and so forth. So that's sort of like the guided video tutorials that I think are great. The other one is, hey, just give me a set of prompts that I can play with. So, and there's a trailhead as well. But Jeff Douglas, as a product manager for Agentforce Vibes, has AFV, like Agentforce Vibes with the 3 letters, AFV-library. And that is an open source GitHub project that is designed for people to share prompts and rules. So if you want to see what our rules are, they ship. Obviously, you can do that directly within the tool. There's like this scales icon. You click that, you can see the rules. Take and customize those. But it also has a set of prompts. So you can see like, hey, what's a prompt for just building objects? What's a prompt for building an app? What's a prompt for diagnosing an issue that I have, which is, hey, I don't necessarily want to use it for building something new. I want to help it find issues that I already have within my code, and it can do that. So again, it's just a great resource to get started, try this and get hands-on, and obviously give us your feedback, because your feedback on real world experience is what we're trying to do to improve the product.
Awesome. What I'm hearing, there's no excuse for any innovator, no matter in what field they are, no matter what knowledge they are on the platform, to just get started and build their business on the Agentforce platform.
Exactly. Totally free to try.
And thank you so much.
A pleasure.
Enjoy New York World Tour.
Thanks again.
Thank you.